When my daughter was first born, we always had some kind of light on in the house, no matter what time of day it was, because she was a baby. She wouldn't sleep through the night. And so when she would inevitably wake up while we're sleeping, one of us would have to get up and we'd have to be able to see where we're going and see so that we could take care of the baby. But as the months have gone along, she started to sleep a bit more consistently through the night. And as that consistency has gotten more consistent, we've been able to turn off more and more of the lights to the point where most nights now we just have all the lights in the house off at night. It helps both of us sleep a bit better. But I said consistent. There are still times where she wakes up in the middle of the night, and one of us will get up and put the binky in and pray that she'll fall back asleep. Now, this doesn't happen every time that I get up to take care of the baby in the middle of the night, but it happens often enough where she starts crying, I hop out of bed, and first thing, I'll stub my toe, I'll bang my elbow, I'll run my shoulder into the wall, or I'll trip over the cat. Sometimes it happens when the lights are on too. But why is it? Why is it? Because when there are no lights on, when it's pitch black in the room, I can't see what's around me. I can't see what the room looks like. I can't see where I am, and I can't see where I'm going. I know the room well enough. I should be able to do it. And yet, when it's dark, often enough, I can't see where I'm going. And I run into something. And I get hurt. But for most of us, the solution is easy, all right? If it's dark, flip on a light. It's the 21st century, and I'm willing to bet that most of us have access to light if we want it. But for some people, the light never comes. Take blind people, for example. Now, there are degrees and there are types of blindness, but for some people, they are blind to the point where the world is just dark. They can't even see light. And I have reason to believe that the man born blind in our story today was blind in that way, where he couldn't even see light. So what happens when Jesus meets a man who can't see anything? What happens to this man when Jesus runs into him, when the only world he's ever known is darkness? If you're following along, we'll be in John chapter 9 today. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So the man went and washed, and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, No, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. How then were your eyes opened, they asked. He replied, The man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see. Where is this man, they asked him. I don't know, he said. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, How can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. Then they turned again to the blind man. What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, He is a prophet. They still did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. Is this your son, they asked? Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see? We know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know he was born blind. But how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who had already decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, He is of age, ask him. A second time they summoned the man who had been blind. "Give glory to God by telling the truth," they said. "We know this man is a sinner." He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered, "I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why? Do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes? We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me, so that I may believe in him." Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this, and asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains." If we jump near the end of the story, we can begin to see the big picture that the disciples and those people who were probably hanging around probably would have noticed from this story. We see it in a quote from the man born blind that Jesus had just healed. In John chapter 9, verse 32, we hear, "Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." Jesus is showing us that he is God. Absolutely. 100%. Jesus is God. He's doing stuff that only God can do. But Jesus' words in this chapter lead me to believe that there's a different point that he's trying to make. That by healing this man, Jesus is trying to tell us something different than that. And so I think today we should try to focus in on that. You see, the big picture is that Jesus is God. But there's something else that John is trying to get us to see. A bigger picture, if you will. So it comes back to this idea of light and darkness, seeing and blindness. We hear this in verse 5. Jesus says, "While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." In the previous chapter of John, Jesus actually said something very similar. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." John doesn't tell us how long had passed between the first light of the world statement and the second, the one right before Jesus healed the blind man. But I think by looking at it, it certainly seems like it was the same day. And if it wasn't, there wasn't that much time to pass between them. And I think that this light of the world statement, Jesus saying, "I am the light of the world," would have been ringing in the disciples' ears when they came across the blind man. And just in case it wasn't, Jesus very blatantly said again, "I am the light of the world." And then boom, blind man. And Jesus heals him. This is a pretty big deal. Seriously, this week, if you're interested in it, go and read John chapters 8 and 9 and see how much Jesus has to say about this whole light of the world thing. Keep it in your mind as you read the rest of the chapters. That's pretty interesting stuff. But if we look at the Bible as a whole, light is still a really big deal. If we think back to the beginning of the Bible, what was the very first thing that God made? Light. And if we look at John in particular, all of the things that he wrote that are in the Bible, he keeps coming back to this language of light. If we take the Gospel of John, his 3 letters, and Revelation, and we look at all of the times light is used, John uses light about a third of the time that word pops up in the New Testament. So why? Why light? Why a blind man? Why do we keep coming back to it? If you don't have light, you can't see. And so the man who was physically blind helps to show us our own condition. Without Jesus, we're in darkness. We can't see. Jesus is using this man who was born blind and what an encounter with the light of the world can do for him to show us who we are without him and what it is that the light of the world can do for us. And Jesus is light in a way that we can't even wrap our heads around. Paul, when he had an encounter with Jesus, he was walking from Israel to Syria, and around noon, he ran into Jesus. This is what he had to say about it later in his life. About noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. Where I grew up, it could be noon and it wouldn't be particularly bright. In fact, I actually got away without having sunglasses for a long time in my life. But Damascus, that's in Syria, well, their weather is frankly a bit more like ours here in Southern California. Noontime there is usually quite bright. And yet, when Jesus appeared, the light from him was so bright that it was worth commenting on at noon in a very sunny place. Jesus is the kind of light that makes the full brightness of the noonday sun seem dim. Think also back to the transfiguration that we talked about a couple weeks ago, back when Jesus showed the kind of light that he truly was to Peter, to James, and to John. When you see the light shining from Jesus, you see that Jesus is God, but you also clearly see something else. You see that we're not quite as bright and shiny as we like to think of ourselves to be. In fact, we're quite blind to what it is that's going on in our hearts. Jesus, the light of the world, shows us the truth of our condition and shows us where to go and what to do. Jesus, the light of the world, is truth. And when we're faced with Jesus and his words, we know the truth about right and wrong. The truth about how well we're doing what is right. Or should I say, how far we are from the right path. And if we're being honest, it shows us how much we love the darkness. Have you ever stayed inside and then finally gone outside at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon and instantly thought, I should have just stayed inside? It's funny, but it's also sad how true that is on so many levels in our lives. Some of us love the darkness, and we know it. Some of us, though, are blind to it. Like the Pharisees, who thought that they were following God so perfectly that they had missed the heart of what God's law was all about. They saw Jesus heal a man who had been blind his whole life, but because it was on the day of rest, and they considered healing to be work, they thought that Jesus was a troublemaker, or worse. They were blind to their own condition, how far their hearts were from the heart of God. And they were blind to seeing who Jesus truly was. Not only God, but God of grace. We're not only blind to who we are, sometimes we're also blind to what our world has become and how much the world's view of things shapes and influences our ways of thinking and our behaviors. But I have good news. This light, it doesn't only show us who we really are, and it doesn't only show us what our world truly is. It also shows us how to navigate it. I think back to Psalm 119. Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light for my path. And so for us today, we should remember Jesus, and that without his word, we have no sight or understanding at all. Without him, we are blind. But if we remain in his word, if we keep on hearing it, if we keep on listening to it, if we keep on letting it change us, we have a light that nothing in this world can compare to. A light that makes noon seem dark. A light that tells us the truth. That tells us the truth of who we are, what our world around us really is, and a light that leads us through it. Which leads us to another interesting point. If we look closely, we can start to see how we can share Jesus with people who may not want to hear. The man who had been healed, when confronted by people who hated Jesus and weren't particularly fond of himself, well, this is what he said. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. The man kept on telling people what had happened. He kept going back to his personal experience. And so he was a light to those around him. When we realize that, we start to see that we can be lights too. In fact, Jesus wants us to be lights to those around us. Be lights alongside Jesus. We see in Matthew chapter 5 that Jesus tells us this: "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see the good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." One part of being a light in this world is speaking up for truth. In fact, we're called to speak the truth, and yet do it in love. So stand up for what's right and what's true. In situations where you'll be heard, I think you should tell those around you the truth of where it is that they're going wrong, but always doing it out of love, not as a way to bring them down or get yourself ahead. Also, like we see in Psalm 43, send me your light and your faithful care. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy mountain, to the place where you dwell. Let that light that we're reflecting, let it lead others to Jesus. If Jesus is the light of the world, and he says that we are to be lights of the world, we're like little Jesuses that are running around. And so like him, do it all out of love. Because we're told in John's first letter, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. Be filled so completely with Jesus' light and let it change you so completely that the people around you have to notice. A final thought about this man who was healed being a light. He did this. He spoke up knowing that there would be consequences. But he knew that he had seen the truth. He had literally been enlightened. He had to speak of what he knew. He couldn't hide it, no matter what the cost was. That's what following Jesus does. Now, some of you are hearing this and thinking, well, that's all well and good. But everywhere I look around me, all I see is darkness and evil. Maybe it's the news that you see or the news that you read. It looks like the kingdom of darkness is expanding all around us. It looks like the kingdom of darkness is spreading its reach. Maybe the darkness is in your own life. It seems like the darkness is closing in. Darkness with your relationships with others. Darkness in the things that happen in your life that feel like they really shouldn't have happened. Darkness in those thoughts and feelings that you can't shake. Or the kind of darkness that confuses you and you have a hard time telling right from wrong, true from false. It's pretty easy to see that darkness and let it worry you. I have two things to say to you. Look to the light. Think of a child who's afraid of the dark. What do? You put a nightlight on for them. What about the camping trip? Sun goes down and you start to hear those sounds in the forest behind you. You start to get a little worried. What do? Light a fire. When something wakes you up in the middle of the night and you can't see, you turn on a lamp. When the darkness is closing in, look to the light. Because what is the one thing darkness will never win against? It's light. In fact, that's how John begins his gospel. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So turn to the light of the world. Pray to the light of the world. Talk to him and know that he hears you and he cares for you. Read what he has already said in your Bibles. Which leads me to a second thing. Remember. Remember, right now is not the end of the story. The same John who was there with Jesus, he received a vision later in his life of the end of the story. He lets us know that one day we'll be there with Jesus. And on that day, the city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it. For the glory of God gives it its light, and the Lamb is its lamp. There will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. So turn to the light and remember what he said. Remember what he's done and what it is that he's going to do.